San Francisco International Airport, September 1972. At 9:22 on a Saturday morning, a 260-pound bodybuilder walks straight through a crowded United Airlines check-in line and stops directly in front of Bruce Lee. What happens next will leave an entire airport terminal completely silent. But 7 minutes earlier, Bruce Lee had simply been third in line, waiting like every other passenger. The terminal was loud in that familiar airport way, rolling suitcases, boarding announcements echoing through the hall, the sharp smell of jet fuel mixing with vending machine coffee. The United Airlines check-in line stretched 20 people deep, moving slowly as travelers shifted their bags and checked the clock. Bruce Lee stood quietly among them. Black leather jacket, white shirt, dark trousers, a gray Samson suitcase in his hand. Just another passenger on a busy Saturday morning in 1972. A few people began whispering. "That's the guy from the Green Hornet." Bruce gave no reaction. He simply moved forward with the line. Calm, balanced, patient. And then at exactly 9:22 the bodybuilder arrived. The bodybuilder enters the terminal at 9:22 in the morning, 8 minutes after Bruce Lee has taken his place in the United Airlines check-in line. He moves with the particular confidence of a man who has spent the last 6 years constructing a body designed to attract attention in public spaces. He is 28 years old, 6 feet 1 inch tall, and weighs 265 pounds. Most of that weight is visible before he has even taken 10 steps into the terminal. His chest measures just over 52 inches, the result of thousands of hours under heavy barbells in a San Jose gym that smells permanently of iron plates and chalk dust. His arms are 22 inches around, large enough that the tight white tank top he is wearing seems less like clothing and more like a frame designed to display them. Men like him rarely move through crowds the way other people do. They do not weave politely between strangers or pause to find a clear path. Instead, they advance with a slower, more deliberate form of motion, the kind large ships use when moving through narrow channels. The crowd adjusts first. It almost always does. For the last 6 years, the bodybuilder has been reinforcing a simple equation in his mind. Size equals authority. Muscle equals dominance. The bigger man occupies the space and the smaller men reorganize themselves around him. In gyms, that equation appears to work perfectly. The strongest men command the equipment. Their presence reshapes the room. Newer lifters step aside instinctively when a man with arms like concrete columns approaches the squat rack. No one argues with someone who can bench press 300 pounds with visible ease. The environment teaches a quiet lesson every day. Mass is power. The bodybuilder has absorbed that lesson so completely that he now carries it with him everywhere he goes. As he enters the United Airlines terminal that morning, he is already running slightly late for his flight. The check-in queue stretches nearly 20 people deep, guided by loose ropes and slow-moving travelers clutching luggage and boarding documents. Waiting patiently has never been his preferred strategy. He begins moving along the side of the line, sliding past people the way a heavy object slides down a gentle incline, using the simplest method available: physical presence. A businessman with a briefcase glances up as the large figure approaches and instinctively steps aside. The movement happens almost automatically, the way pedestrians give way to bicycles on narrow sidewalks. A few steps later, an elderly woman holding a small travel bag finds the same silent pressure applied to her shoulder. She pulls the bag close to her chest and shifts out of the way without protest. Neither interaction requires words. They rarely do. This is the kind of silent negotiation large men experience every day in crowded places. The physics of bodies decide the outcome before anyone has time to object. The bodybuilder continues forward until he reaches the third person in line. Bruce Lee. At first glance, Bruce does not appear particularly significant within the mathematics the bodybuilder understands. He stands 5 feet 7 inches, perhaps 140 pounds, wearing a black leather jacket over a white shirt and dark trousers. Compared to the massive frame approaching from behind, he looks almost light. The bodybuilder applies the same tactic he used on the previous 2 travelers. A firm shoulder angled slightly forward, applying just enough pressure to suggest movement without technically forcing it. Except this time the equation fails. Bruce shifts his weight slightly, rotating perhaps 2 degrees to the side. The motion is subtle, almost invisible to anyone not watching closely. But it changes the geometry of the contact point just enough that the push finds no leverage. The larger body meets something unexpected, not resistance, simply no movement. Bruce remains exactly where he is, facing forward toward the counter as though nothing has touched him. For a moment the bodybuilder stops. He is not accustomed to this outcome. His mental arithmetic runs again automatically. 265 pounds against 140. Height advantage. Arm length advantage. The numbers should produce compliance. They do not. He leans slightly forward, irritation beginning to replace curiosity. "Hey, I need to get through." "A big guy is coming. Move it." Bruce does not respond immediately. He takes a quiet breath, then turns around slowly, giving the larger man his full attention. His sunglasses remain in place for a second before he removes them and folds them carefully into the pocket of his jacket. His voice, when he speaks, is calm and level. The line is for everyone. "Wait your turn." The sentence lands in the space between them with the quiet certainty of a fact that requires no additional explanation. And for the first time that morning, the bodybuilder encounters something his 6 years of training never prepared him for: a man who does not move. The tension between the two men holds for a moment longer than anyone in the queue expects. People in crowded spaces develop an instinct for confrontation the way sailors develop instincts for weather. They sense when something is about to happen even before the first visible movement occurs. An airline employee behind the counter notices the stillness forming in the line and reacts the way airline employees are trained to react when conflict begins to gather momentum. "Gentlemen, please," she says, her voice firm but controlled. "Everyone will be served in order. Just remain in your place in the queue." The statement carries the quiet authority of procedure. Airports function on procedure the same way aircraft do. The bodybuilder turns his head toward the counter for a moment, evaluating whether the situation is worth escalating in front of an employee whose job includes calling security when necessary. He exhales once through his nose. For now, he steps back. It is not a retreat in his mind. More delay. His ego has not been wounded yet, only interrupted. He positions himself directly behind Bruce Lee with the posture of someone who has decided the situation is not finished. The line moves forward again, slowly, each traveler advancing a step closer to the counter. Bruce reaches the front a minute later. He places his gray Samson suitcase onto the metal scale built into the check-in counter. While waiting in line earlier, he had briefly opened it to organize a folder of documents for his meetings in Los Angeles, and in the quiet distraction of the queue, he never fully secured one of the clasps. The lid sits just slightly loose. The bodybuilder notices. Opportunity sometimes arrives in small details. He shifts his weight forward half a step and looks down at the suitcase resting on the edge of the scale. From where he stands, the angle is perfect. One small movement would be enough to dislodge it. What happens next could be described, from a certain perspective, as an accident. A large foot in a crowded space making clumsy contact with luggage near the ground. But that description would require ignoring the deliberate way his leg moves. His boot drives forward with enough force to knock the suitcase sideways off the scale. The bag strikes the polished linoleum floor with a hard slap. The loose clasp springs open instantly. The lid flips back and the contents scatter outward across the terminal floor. Two neatly folded shirts slide several feet away. A pair of dark training trousers follows them. Smaller personal items spread across the smooth surface like cards sliding across a table. Around 40 people in the surrounding area witness the moment. Some turn their heads immediately. Others simply freeze in place. The bodybuilder throws his head back and laughs, the sound loud enough to cut through the background noise of rolling luggage and overhead announcements. It is not the laugh of someone amused by a mistake. It is the laugh of someone who believes he has restored the balance of power. He turns slightly toward his companion and speaks at a volume calculated to travel just far enough. "Look at the little Chinese guy picking up his garbage." A few travelers glance at each other and then quickly look away. Non interbenes. Crowded places have their own rules of behavior, and one of those rules is that strangers rarely volunteer themselves into someone else's conflict. The silence begins to grow. Bruce Lee does not react immediately. He kneels down on the terminal floor with the same calm efficiency he might use in his own home. His movements are deliberate, almost methodical. He picks up the first shirt and folds it carefully before placing it back into the suitcase. Then the second. Then the trousers. Each item is handled with the quiet patience of someone who has decided that time belongs to him, not to the people watching. Behind him, the bodybuilder continues to talk. Another remark to his companion. Something about how some people should remember their place in the world. The laughter continues for a few seconds longer before fading at the edges. Mockery requires reaction to survive. Bruce gives him none. He collects the final item from the floor, places it back inside the suitcase and closes the lid. The metal clasp snaps shut with a clean, decisive click. The sound carries farther than it should in the quiet terminal. Bruce rises slowly to his feet. And for the first time since the suitcase struck the ground, he turns to face the bodybuilder directly. Something in the atmosphere of the terminal changes. The quiet that settles over the surrounding passengers is no longer passive observation. It is anticipation. The terminal does not become silent all at once. Airports are rarely capable of complete silence. There are always distant boarding announcements, the soft rumble of luggage wheels moving across polished floors, the muted conversations of travelers passing through different gates. But the sound around the United Airlines check-in counter changes in a noticeable way. People nearby stop speaking. Movement slows. The small circle of passengers who had watched the suitcase spill open now sense that the moment has not ended. If anything, it has only shifted into a new phase. Something about the way Bruce Lee stands up tells them the situation is still unfolding. Bruce turns toward the bodybuilder fully now. No hurry. No sudden movement. Just a deliberate rotation of the shoulders until the two men are facing one another across less than 3 feet of floor space. For the first time since the exchange began, Bruce removes the last barrier between them. His sunglasses are already folded into his jacket pocket. His eyes meet the larger man's directly. The difference in height is obvious. The difference in weight is even more obvious. But the posture Bruce holds does not acknowledge either measurement. His stance is balanced, weight centered evenly between both feet, hands relaxed at his sides. There is nothing aggressive in the position, but there is also nothing uncertain about it. It is the posture of someone who has already decided exactly how the next few seconds will proceed. The bodybuilder notices the change immediately. Up until now, he has been interacting with what he assumed was a smaller man who simply did not understand the usual rules of crowded spaces. But the way Bruce stands now removes that assumption. This is not nervousness. It is control. Bruce speaks in a voice that is calm enough to sound almost conversational, yet clear enough that every person standing within several yards hears each word without effort. "You're going to apologize," he says. The sentence hangs in the air for a fraction of a second before he finishes it. "Or I am going to demonstrate why size without skill is just dead weight." There is no anger in the delivery, no raised voice, no threat in the dramatic sense. It sounds instead like the statement of a simple fact, delivered with the quiet certainty of someone describing gravity or temperature. A condition exists. A result will follow. The bodybuilder stares at him. Inside his mind, the familiar calculation begins again. 265 pounds, 6 feet 1 inch. Arms built through 6 years of heavy training, each muscle group developed through thousands of repetitions of controlled movement under iron. Across from him stands a man who appears barely half his mass. The gym logic that has shaped his thinking for years offers only one possible answer. Larger bodies control smaller bodies. Strength is visible. Dominance is measurable. And yet something about this situation refuses to match that equation. The calmness of the smaller man feels out of place. It disrupts the normal pattern of confrontation. For a brief moment, the bodybuilder considers the possibility that the warning should be taken seriously. But the thought passes quickly. His entire adult life has reinforced the same lesson over and over again. Mass wins. He glances toward his companion standing a few feet away, offering a short smile meant to signal that the moment is about to end the way these moments usually do. Then he steps forward. The movement is slow, almost casual. No clenched fists. No visible aggression. Just the confident advance of a man who expects the smaller person to retreat at the final moment. His right hand lifts. Open palm. The gesture is familiar to anyone who has witnessed minor confrontations between men in crowded places. It is the dominant push, the simple physical statement that establishes hierarchy without technically becoming a punch. The same move that has ended dozens of small conflicts in the bodybuilder's favor over the years. His arm extends toward Bruce Lee's chest. Around them, several passengers hold their breath without realizing they are doing it. Everyone watching understands the same thing at the same time. The next movement will decide everything. The bodybuilder's right hand travels forward with the confident simplicity of a movement he has performed many times before. Open palm. Straight line. A dominant push meant to land squarely against Bruce Lee's chest and drive the smaller man backward just enough to re-establish the hierarchy that, in his experience, always exists between bodies of different sizes. The hand never reaches its target. Bruce's left arm moves first. To the people watching, the motion appears almost effortless, as though it requires no strength at all. His hand meets the bodybuilder's wrist at the precise moment the push reaches full extension. But instead of blocking the movement head-on, Bruce rotates his forearm slightly outward. The contact redirects the incoming arm off its path. There is no clash of force, no loud impact, just a smooth change in direction. Several witnesses later struggle to describe exactly what they saw. The best explanation anyone offers is that it looked as though the larger man's arm simply decided to go somewhere else. In reality, the principle is simple. Intercept the attack during the moment it commits to motion when its path can still be altered with minimal effort. Redirect rather than resist. The larger the incoming force, the easier it becomes to guide it off balance. That moment of redirection creates the opening Bruce needs. His right leg moves next. The kick begins from a chambered position near his hip, the knee lifting slightly before extending outward with sudden precision. To an untrained observer, the movement is too fast to follow clearly. It appears almost like a blur connecting 2 points in space. The point of contact is exact. The ball of Bruce's foot drives into the bodybuilder's solar plexus, the small vulnerable area directly beneath the sternum where the diaphragm controls the body's breathing rhythm. The power behind the strike does not come from the size of the muscles in Bruce's leg. It comes from the kinetic chain. His standing foot presses firmly against the floor. The leg muscles engage first, pushing against the ground. The hips rotate sharply, transferring momentum through the torso. The abdominal muscles contract, stabilizing the spine while channeling the energy forward. The final extension of the leg concentrates all of that motion into a contact point no larger than 2 square inches. 140 pounds of coordinated movement, delivered at the precise location where breathing depends on uninterrupted muscular function. The effect is immediate. The bodybuilder's diaphragm spasms violently. His mouth opens in reflex, but no sound emerges. The muscles responsible for pulling air into the lungs have been temporarily shut down. For a moment, his body forgets how to breathe. His hands move instinctively toward his midsection. Every instinct he possesses now focuses on the same desperate objective: ire. While his attention collapses inward, Bruce's left leg moves again. The sweep comes low and fast, striking the back of the bodybuilder's support leg at the exact moment when all 265 pounds of his weight have shifted onto that single point of balance. The geometry of the moment is unforgiving. When the diaphragm spasm forces the body forward, the center of gravity shifts. Remove the supporting leg at that instant and the remaining structure cannot compensate. It does not resemble a typical fall. There is no attempt to recover balance. There is only the sudden absence of it. The bodybuilder collapses backward, arms lifting reflexively as gravity claims the weight his legs can no longer support. His back strikes the linoleum floor of the terminal with a heavy impact that seems to travel outward through the ground itself. The sound echoes sharply across the check-in area. Several nearby passengers flinch. For a moment, the entire scene freezes. 265 pounds of muscle lies flat on the airport floor, eyes open, chest heaving in shallow, painful attempts to draw air that still refuses to cooperate. Bruce Lee does not step forward. He does not raise his voice. He does not deliver another strike. The moment the threat ends, his attention leaves the man on the floor completely. Instead, he turns calmly back toward the airline counter, lifting his gray Samson suitcase and placing it once again on the metal scale. The airline agent behind the counter has not moved during the last few seconds. Her hands rest flat on the surface in front of her. Her expression suggests that the situation unfolding in front of her was not included in the standard training manual for customer service procedures. Bruce adjusts the suitcase slightly so it sits evenly on the scale. "Excuse the interruption," he says calmly. The agent blinks once and glances down at the weight display. 42 pounds, she answers automatically, still processing what she has just witnessed. That's well within the limit. She prints the boarding pass with slightly unsteady hands and slides it across the counter. Bruce takes it, nods in quiet thanks, and closes the suitcase. Behind him, the bodybuilder is still lying on the floor of San Francisco International Airport, discovering slowly and painfully that breathing is a skill he temporarily does not possess. The bodybuilder remains on the floor for several seconds without moving. His eyes are open, but his body is entirely focused on a single problem that has replaced every other thought in his mind: breathing. The kick to his solar plexus has forced his diaphragm into a violent spasm, and until that muscle resets itself, air refuses to move properly in or out of his lungs. His chest rises in shallow, uneven attempts to pull oxygen back into a system that suddenly feels unfamiliar. His companion kneels beside him.
"You okay?"
"Ay, breathe. Just breathe." But the advice is almost useless. Breathing is something the body normally performs without instruction. When the diaphragm locks, the process becomes something closer to learning again from the beginning. Around them, the small crowd that formed during the confrontation slowly begins to move again. Some passengers whisper quietly to each other. Others simply stare down at the massive figure on the floor, trying to reconcile the image with what they just witnessed. Only moments ago, the bodybuilder had appeared physically dominant over everyone in the line. Now he lies flat on the polished linoleum of San Francisco International Airport, temporarily defeated by 5 seconds of movement that few of them fully understood. It takes nearly 2 full minutes before the bodybuilder manages to sit upright. By that time, Bruce Lee had already moved toward the seating area near the departure gates, carrying his suitcase and boarding pass with the calm focus of a man continuing his morning. 3 people approach him before the boarding announcement begins. The first is a karate instructor in a dark business suit, a man in his mid-40s who introduces himself with the respectful tone of one professional recognizing another. "Mr. Lee," he says, "I've been teaching martial arts for 15 years. That sidekick and sweep, the timing was perfect. I've never seen the economy of movement demonstrated so clearly." Bruce smiles slightly. "It isn't about a specific system," he explains. "The principle is simple. Intercept the attack before it develops power. Strike the center line where the body is weakest. Use the opponent's own weight against him." The instructor nods slowly, committing the explanation to memory. The second person who approaches is a young woman, perhaps 25, who had been standing a few places behind Bruce in the check-in line. "I just wanted to say thank you," she says quietly. "That man was pushing everyone around. I thought he was going to do the same to me when he reached my spot." Bruce considers her words for a moment. "People confuse fear with respect," he replies. "When someone relies only on size to control others, they never discover what they truly are without it." The third person is an older man with gray hair and a posture shaped by long years of discipline. He introduces himself simply as a Korean War veteran. "What you did back there," the veteran says, "was controlled. Minimum force, maximum result, and you stopped immediately after." Bruce nods. "The goal in a confrontation is not to destroy the opponent," he explains. "It's to end the threat. The moment the threat ends, continuing becomes something else." A few minutes later, 2 airport security officers arrive after receiving reports of a disturbance in the check-in area. They question several witnesses. Every account describes the same sequence: the insults, the kicked suitcase, the attempted push. When they ask Bruce whether he wishes to file charges, he pauses briefly before answering. "No," he says. "If he learned something today, that is enough." The bodybuilder does not pursue the matter either. Years later, a bodybuilding magazine publishes an anonymous interview with a competitor describing a public confrontation that changed the way he understood strength. "I spent 6 years building a body that looked dangerous," the man says. "Then I discovered that looking powerful and being powerful are 2 different things." Bruce Lee later summarized the lesson in simpler terms. Visible strength impresses the eye. Functional strength decides the outcome. And on a Saturday morning in September 1972, inside an airport terminal filled with strangers, that difference revealed itself in 5 unforgettable seconds.